Okay, so welcome to a new chapter of Spring Boot. My name is Stéphane. I'm working on Spring for 12 years now, mostly on Spring Boot and Spring Framework, so that's my daily job. Because often I'm being asked if I'm a developer advocate or if I'm like working on Spring during the weekend or during my nights, but no, this is my job. I'm doing that daily. Who doesn't know about Spring? Okay. Okay. Who's not using Spring Boot? Never use Spring Boot? Okay. Cool. All right. So let's dive in. It will be mostly demos because it's late and you don't want to be bothered with slides. I wouldn't be bothered with slides if I were you either. The audience is small enough so that you can interact with me at any time. My plan is to go 1 hour so that you know where you'll land. So 1 hour from now, if you interrupt me too much, it will be longer than that, but feel free to do it, right? So we will work on a small application just to use that as a showcase for the demo. Let's assume a matchmaking app, but for games, for gamers actually. So the app that we have lets gamers register to a queue, and when they register to a queue, we basically ask some remote services about two things: the profile of the player and the stats of the player. So player profile is like, I don't know, name, location, whatever. Stats is about is that person good at that game? Where is that person located? That kind of things. And so then you queue a number of players in the app, and at some point there are enough players to create lobbies. So players are being matched and they can play together. All right, let's have a look to the app. Of course, the app doesn't use the new version of Spring Boot, otherwise it would be too easy. I will try to make that a little bit bigger. It's quite new. Do you prefer maybe the white background? Yeah, white background sounds better. Watch out. Watch out. You've been wrong. Okay, so my app is starting. That's the latest of the Spring Boot 3 generation, 358. So I'm up with my application, and I have this little script. Okay, let me make that bigger. Actually, I won't be able to change the background unless someone knows Ghost TTI. I tried to do it the other time and couldn't find the option. I will try to look at the doc at some point. So I'm queuing players, right? Remember, each player that goes in, we look ask for the profile, ask for the stats, gather the information. This information comes from remote services, and then you get like lobbies being created. Okay? Nothing really fancy. More stuff coming in. Okay, so that's the app. So the whole point of today's session is to talk about Spring Boot 4. Spring Boot 4 was released last week, so that's really recent. This new generation keeps the baseline for Java, so you can still run Spring Boot 4 based applications with Java 17. Of course, we do recommend to use the latest LTS. So as you know, Java has now an LTS scheme where they do every 6 months an intermediate releases, and at some point they switch that to an LTS. So for in the recent past, 17, 21, and 25 are LTS releases, and 25 is the latest one that we have, and we'll talk a little bit about that. It has not changed. You can also use Java 25 with Spring Boot 3 if you want to. So both versions, they do support 17 to 25. Spring Boot 4 will support more than that, obviously, since we've barely started that generation. The baseline for Jakarta-E has changed. It used to be 10, Spring Boot 3, it's now 11. Nothing really fancy for you to see, except probably two things: Servlet 6.1, which means you get the latest embedded servlet container, so Tomcat 11, Jetty 12.1. Not going to talk about Undoto because they do not support EE 11 yet. The other one is JPA, so new JPA spec, which means a new Hibernate version. There's also a new validation spec, so you get also a new Hibernate validation. So essentially, same Java version, at least for the baseline, and you get new version of third-party dependencies. So if you use Hibernate and the validation API, you have to look at that one. Many features that comes from the portfolio as a whole. So you get like new features in Spring Data, Spring Integration, Spring Security. I'm not going to cover those, but I'm going to focus on what the Spring Boot team, my team, has been busy with this fourth generation. So the biggest thing that we've done is to modularize the auto configuration. So by module, I do not mean JPMS. Who knows about JPMS? The Java Platform System? Yeah, a few. We're not doing that. I've been answered many times, so that's why I want to clarify. So it's really about modularity in the sense of having separate modules per technology. We will see that in the demo. Why is it important? Previously, what you had with Spring Boot was a single auto configuration that brings all the features that Spring Boot has to offer. And then you would add libraries to your app, and that would trigger some conditions, and some things were auto-configured. With Spring Boot 4, things are much more explicit, because the auto-configurations, they now reside in a dedicated module that you opt into. So you want to add Spring Boot Equibase, you want to add Spring Boot JPA, you want to add Spring Boot Flyway, and that will trigger the auto-configuration only if you opt in for those. So it's more explicit now than it used to be. We've renamed a few starters. I'm going to show that during the demos, and of course, plenty of features. All right, so first thing that you want to do is upgrade, and then I have also my, I forgot to do that. I have that thing. If I forget about the scenario of my demo, I will go into that story. Oh, okay. Right. First thing I can do, I mentioned that previously. I'm going to make that bigger. Don't worry. It's actually even small for me. This might be. Oh, that's because I'm here. Okay. Cool. So first thing I want to do is I want to upgrade to 25, which is the latest LTS. So you don't have to do it now. As I mentioned, you can, first of all, you can not do it, but I do not recommend it. You can do it before upgrading, after upgrading, at a different time. It's really up to you. Just making sure that I have everything running on 25. So why would you want to upgrade to 25? Yes, it's running 25. One thing is you'll get some performance improvements for free, and I really mean it. So the JVM continues to evolve. They continue to work on performance improvements, and without changing anything in your code, you'll get a performance boost. So that's something that I would highly recommend to look at. The other thing, there are many other things, but the two ones I want to focus on for this upgrade is some feature that landed in Java 25 that we've been working on with the platform team at Oracle, is the concept of AOT cache. Who knows about AOT cache or Project Laden? A few of you. Okay. So this is far from new. This initiative started in Java 9, if you can believe it. So it's really, it had a different name. It was named CDS back then. Let me quickly explain what it does and how you would be interested to use that in your organization. The concept of AOT cache is you take an application, you start this application with some flags to the VM to tell it to recall what it's doing on startup. Then you exit the application. And when you exit the JVM will dump a cache of things that it did during startup. Okay. Once you have that cache, you can start the application again, referring to the file that it has created, and the application will start much faster. Okay. There are a number of requirements to make that happen correctly, so that the cache is not invalidated because some environment has changed. And that's where we jump in. That's where the Spring team jump in. Spring Boot is, I wouldn't call that natively, but Spring Boot has like dedicated support for AOT cache. So we offer a tool to extract the application in a format that will be suitable to do the training run. All kinds of documentation, so you just check our reference guide. It's explain what you need to do. And that will be very useful, so give it a try. Not going to demo it. If you are interested by more details, I would highly recommend going to YouTube on the DevOps channel. So this last month, there was a talk with Anna Maria and Moritz. Moritz is my colleague, and they were showing everything from AOT cache and project latent without Spring, and Moritz showing with Spring, how you can integrate it with Spring, and performance benchmarks, which are really interesting. So you could see all the stage, the kind of benefit you could expect. Okay, so let's upgrade, and I'm going to do this. Okay, let's see what happens if I do that. Let's have a look to let's have a look to our dependencies. Oh yeah, before you ask, because that's also a question I have like many times. I'm using Gradle just because there's two build systems and I can't use both at the same time. There is a Maven build in the demo. I will share the demo with you. So if you're lost at some, well, first of all, interrupt me, because then I could have a chance maybe to course correct. But if you want to reproduce the demo at home, I will share the repo with you. And so my app is not really that fancy. It's a web application. It's using Mustache. Who knows about Mustache? Few of you. So Mustache is it's a rendering template engine. So this is the thing that basically generates this on the server side. Nothing interesting, just the fact that it uses this, and that's pretty much everything it uses, right? Nothing more. Okay. Okay. Oh, I forgot to do something. Sorry. That's why I have a script. Let's roll back. Cool. What I want to show you, okay, this first. Couple of credits. That's what happens when you successful. I'm glad. It's really strange. Okay, let's see. What does he know about? Okay. 358. So that should work. Wow. Okay, so the demo I wanted to do, and for some reason IntelliJ doesn't want to cooperate. Let me try again. This must be. Oh wait. Okay. Bad IntelliJ. Ah, there we go. So if I'm typing Kafka, then you see that I have like a number of things. This application doesn't use Kafka, right? Let me try Elasticsearch. Oh boy. So Elasticsearch, I have like plenty of classes related to Elasticsearch. This is really the support of Spring Boot for Elasticsearch. I'm not using Elasticsearch. And then let's try one more. ActiveMQ, which is a JMS broker, not using ActiveMQ. Let's show that. If I have time, the other thing I wanted to show you, but I can do that after the upgrade. Okay, let's hope now it's not going to break the other side.
Yeah.
Something I can't show you anymore because we're out of RC, but if you want to try -1 and RC with Spring now, we publish them to Maven Central, so you don't have to add extra repositories, just change the version and you'll be set. So it's easier for you now to test the milestones and the release candidate, so please do so. We've got way more feedback this time around than last time because it was easier probably in enterprise where only Maven Central is allowed. So we got way more bug reports during the milestone phase, so I think that's good. Let's see if now it works. Yes. Okay, so let me type Kafka. Nothing. Elasticsearch, nothing.
Wow.
DevMQ, nothing. Okay. So what that first impression, that means your ID now is way more focused on the technologies that you've chosen to add to the application. All right, so first problem is REST template builder doesn't work. Who knows about the REST template? Come on. Wake up. Okay. Who doesn't know about the REST template? Doesn't know. Interesting. Only a few. Okay. So REST template is the API. It's the first API that Spring had to help you with doing HTTP requests. So it's essentially to help you build an HTTP client. REST template exists for 21 years now, so it's a little bit old. Okay, so if I'm asking for REST template builder, it's not there. The only one is some class in Spring Framework that happens to have REST template and builder in its name. Okay, so let's go back to our build. So this is the first thing that you'll notice when you upgrade, is that you have now to opt in for more things. So the web starter no longer brings you an HTTP client, and it doesn't do it because there are multiple HTTP clients you could choose from, right? You could choose the REST client, you could choose the web client, you could choose not to use those and actually build your own. So we don't provide that anymore. We don't provide the auto configuration anymore for this. But because I'm upgrading and I still want to use the REST client, I'm going to add a starter for it. So you'll find that Spring Boot 4 has more starters than it used to be because there are now more options. So that's the first thing to remember. The other thing to remember is because we've added modules, we've also repackaged a number of things. So you'll find that to be consistent across the code base, all the Spring Framework.boot technology, that's going to be the root package for the module. And of course, Spring-boot-starter technology is the name of the starter. All right, let's go a little bit further. So this is slice test. So this is a test now. This is a slice test to test my Spring MVC application, or at least my Spring MVC, the part of my application that uses the web layer, and it's not there. And it's not there anymore because we've applied the same mechanism for the test auto configuration, right? Same thing. So test auto configuration, you won't get infrastructure for something that you've not opted into. What that means concretely is that you're not going to use that anymore because that's like test with no infrastructure. That's not very useful. And you'll find for that a naming convention again. Spring-boot-starter dash technology dash test is the test for that technology. Okay. So nobody sees a problem here. What's the problem? What's the problem?
Is it the name convention?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go.
I don't. Maybe the fact that we have started work, we start work names
Right, correct. So you see that this doesn't match, right? Actually, the starter is named WebMVC, and the starter web still exists in a deprecated fashion. Because if we remove starter web, basically the old internet will break, so we don't want to do that. Where is that name coming from? Why was it named web initially? When Spring Boot started, there was only one web framework, which is Spring MVC, and then later on the reactive stack with Webflux came in. So now we have the opportunity to align those names, and so that's why we have decided to rename. So I told you about rename starters. This is one of them. Okay, cool. So I did that. That should work now. Yeah. That should work too. Oh no, it doesn't. Because here I have a slice test for the client. So I have a slice test for my REST client.
You need
Doesn't exist. Well, you get the idea, right?
Yeah.
I need to opt in for that. I want to test also REST client. Okay. So if I go back, then, oh yeah, also something I meant to show you is you'll see also this consistency for the test infrastructure or Spring Framework boot technology test. One more here, nothing to see. And that, don't need to spend too much time on it. If you're interested, there were like some changes in HTTP headers, so that's why I had to do a bit of change there. Let's start. Yeah. That works on 4.0. And maybe what I can do is show you this. Right, because that also is a question that I get often. This is the HTTP editor in IntelliJ. So if you create a file and you use .http, so as the suffix of the file, you use HTTP, it will automatically open the HTTP editor. So you can like write sample queries or anything that you want to test. You can even commit that to your Git repo. And if you use IntelliJ, just open the file and then you can run things. That should be pretty useful. All right. So what I wanted to show, if I have time, because most I don't, is that our queuing for the player, it's not that optimized, right? It's like 400 milliseconds. It's a bit slow. So we'll see later what we can do to make it faster. All right. So for those who are using the REST template, I have an announcement to make, and please don't throw tomatoes at me just yet. So we've decided to deprecate the REST template, and it will be removed in Spring Framework 8, so the next generation. So you might guess a little bit why. So it's, we've been back and forth with this, trying to deprecate it, and then the community not being so happy about it. This time we will do it for sure, because we've implemented new features in the replacement that we can't apply to the REST template. So now the feature set is not at parity. RestClient has more features than the REST template, and it will continue to do so due to the way the REST template is architecture. So that's something that we don't want to pursue. So the REST template will go away. So let me show you how you can upgrade to the REST client. So first of all, as with the REST template, you can inject a builder, and the builder Spring Boot will do its magic to get you the converters and the security configuration that you've configured and whatever. The API is a little bit different. Let me change that to REST client. So I have my REST client. Now let's have a look to this request. So this is the client to get the profile and get the stats, as I mentioned initially. So I want to do an exchange, passing some headers, so the accept headers to ask for JSON, and then deserialize that to a DTO, which is per profile. As you can see, there's a bit of ceremony. If you look at REST template. But one of the problems of the REST template is that there's so many methods with overloading. So when you do dot exchange and then you dig into the options, it can be overwhelming because there's one method that will do essentially, that will take your input essentially. That's not great. Instead, with the with REST client, first of all, it's very, very close, if not identical, to the web client. So now the API between the reactive stack and the servlet stack, they're very, very close. Very close, at least in terms of preparing the query. And you'll get a DSL where you're being guided, right? Yeah. Each stage will tell you, okay, what's the HTTP method you want. Then once you select an HTTP method, you'll get more options depending on the HTTP method you've chosen. So I want to do this. I want to do profile. Passing a parameter for the ID, and then I want that to be expanded with the argument there. If I want to pass headers, I have like shortcuts, and I can retrieve and ask for the body to be serialized to play. Okay, so that's a little bit more. The API is much nicer than what REST template used to give you. Of course, you will also find the same support for testing. This, and quickly is to also show you something that's a little bit strange. Those fields have been made package private because I want to connect my mock server to the REST template, right? So to be able to connect to the actual REST template, I need to make them package private so that the test can see it. That's what you see here. But the infrastructure for REST clients is way better. So I can directly inject the server here, basically asking Spring Boot to create it for me. And once I've done that, it will auto-bind to the Reactive. So I can remove some code, which is always appreciated. All right, that works. So REST template going away, move to REST client or move to web client, or depending on what you want to use. You can do that at your own pace, of course. There is no rush. You can also create, if you want to, you can also create a REST client based on a REST template. Yeah. So that's interesting if you've your REST template is configured with message converters and all kinds of infrastructure that it will be hard for you to migrate. You can first create the REST client based on your existing REST template and then move to the API. So that gives you a two-step migration. You don't have to do everything at once. Okay, cool. New feature. So let's have a look to this guy. And let's assume I want to do something like call a method on it. So if I want to call a method on it, IntelliJ warns me that it might produce a NullPointerException. The reason why it could produce a NullPointerException, nothing new with Spring Boot 4, is because this method, way before Spring Boot 4, can return null if the body of the reply is not set, right? That sounds logical. If you do a request, you get a reply with a 200, but there is no body, there is nothing that you can deserialize, and so you deserialize. You return, a null from that. That's problematic, but nothing is screaming at my ID until I start using it. If I look how it's being used right now, that's the thing that does the that queues the prayer. Sorry. So this is you can see it's used here. If I go here, then I can see, ooh, I'm actually calling that directly without checking, right? Yeah. But you don't see a warning in IntelliJ because the context is lost. Mm-hmm. So there is an initiative that's been there's a lot of players from various companies. they've gathered to work on a solution for this, and they came up with a specification that's called JSpecify. Who knows about JSpecify? Oh, quite a bit. Actually, quite surprised. Okay. So JSpecify is a set of annotations where you declare, you give metadata about the intent. Is that return time going to be null? Is that return time never going to be null? And so you add additional metadata to your code that is helpful, but it's not helpful without some kind of check. That's where nullaway can come from. So nullaway is a tool that you add to your build, and it will validate that what you've expressed actually is correct. So if you try, in this case, for instance, going back to this one, I'm not saying anything about whether or not this can be null. If I'm not saying that, and then I'm not doing any check whatsoever, not saying essentially it can be null, the compilation will not work. So the build will break. So it's very different from what we had before, where you add metadata annotations to your code and you rely on the ID to warn you. Now it's actually the build that's failing. Let's have a look to how we can make that happen. So I'm going to add one more buzzword and then hopefully we'll be done with it. That's error prone. So error prone, that's a kind of check style, if you will, lets you run rules. And nullaway is actually a plugin in error prone, so that's why we're going to add it. So I'm adding the plugin to my I don't know, did that go? Dependencies. So I'm using a version of error prone. I'm adding nullaway here, right? So I'm basically opting in for that plugin. And then last step is I need to do some compilation stuff. So that might look a little bit funky. Let's disable all the checks. The reason why I'm doing this is because error prone itself will come for core checks. And I don't want to focus on that. Right? I don't want to bother with this. Of course, you shouldn't do that, or if the checks are annoying, you should opt in for the ones that you want. But I'm basically saying to error prone, the core stuff don't do it. Triggering the JSpecify mode for nullaway, which is the thing that will look deeper into your code and then try to find places where you could have a pointer exception. I'm going to go back to that in a minute. And this is probably the most important. By default, error prone will list the things that it has found as a warning. It will not break your build. You want it to break your build, because if you have warnings and it doesn't break your build, you'll have like 200 warnings and then 400 warnings. You know the drill, right? Okay, so you don't see this, but I trigger a build here with a shortcut, which is essentially this project. Everything is fine, but it's not fine because it's a greenfield project, so it should fail. It should find something that doesn't work. That's where only null mark comes from. If you add this to a project, your build will look like a Christmas tree, right? Plenty of problems, and you want to deal with those problems one by one. So that's one strategy, is to use only null mark. And only null mark is essentially saying to the tool, only apply those checks where I told you I want to opt in for this. There's many locations, so you could do that, for instance, on a package. You could say on a package it's null mark. And that package, not the sub packages, only that package will be checked. Okay, so it's failing now. Perfect. Let's have a look to the problem. So now you see that my profile there, IntelliJ, is telling me there's a problem. I'm looking at it's a little bit here. So returning nullable expressions from method with non-null return type. So essentially it's saying this can return null, but you didn't say so here. And this works, of course, because the Spring code base has those JSpecify notations defined. That's how it finds it. So it turns out that what I did before was right, because in the scenario, I have a spec for that service, and the spec for that service is telling me either it will be successful and there will be a body, or it will fail because I haven't found the profile or there's something wrong with the profile. So I know for sure that I will never go into the state where the return type is null per spec. So I want to show you something that you might not need to do yourself, but that's actually quite helpful. This is a class from Spring Boot, right? I use not null, which is like a bit. There is a bit of hint in the name, but if it works like that, it would be too magic. And you see that the warning goes away. So how does it work? You can define a contract annotation in your code and then provide a bit of hint, and NullAway will read that and apply accordingly. So essentially what that means is if the first argument is null, we don't care about the second one, so that the underscore could be anything, then this will throw an exception. Okay. So it knows now that if that is null, there's an exception, we won't go further, and so the check goes away. I have the same kind of issues here, that all line is yellow because for the same reason. Just to show you a different thing, I'm using state now, so I'm passing a Boolean expression here. Let's have a look. Something with contract, if this expression is false, we don't care about the second argument exception. So then NullAway evaluate this and know for sure that the object is not null. Not to worry about this, right? This is framework code base, not application code base. There are only 2 classes in Spring Framework that uses this because it's very corner case. The rest doesn't need it. Forgot to mention also something. Let's assume that actually null was correct, because the spec says that maybe it can return nobody. Then you can flag the object as returning, and then the caller, if it doesn't deal with that, the build will fail again, etc. I have one more problem. It's this guy. This guy is injected by this interface from Spring here. And essentially, we have the guarantee that this will be called before the bean is going to be made available to users. So you know that that method is going to be called before the object is being used. And JSpecify is not happy with it. It's basically telling you this field that you didn't say was nullable, it can be null at some point, but you know yourself that it won't be because it's a detail of the framework you're using. So for those cases, there is an escape hatch where you can suppress the warning. This should go away, but that's a bug in IntelliJ. It's actually fixed in the next beta, but I'm not using beta now. Right, so a bit of detail about that, maybe. First of all, this feature, you can ignore it entirely. Right? You could not use it, not bother with it, not even look at it. There is absolutely no requirement if you're going to Spring Boot 4 to use this. It's a new feature that you can opt into in your libraries, in your apps, depending on the usage that you have. It is who's writing in Kotlin, some code in Kotlin here. Okay. So Kotlin has this nullability in its type system. So Kotlin is really native in the language. It's going to be native in Java, by the way. So this is the first step. Java is also working on integrating that into the platform itself, but it will take years. So that's why we decided to move along sooner than that. It's especially interesting when you have Kotlin code calling Java code, because now with the nullability annotation, Kotlin sees that as the proper with the proper nullability metadata. Currently, if you call Java code from Kotlin, it's a little bit strange because you have to do question mark all over the place for that to work. That's not the case if you're using this. You can't really, if you want it to be correct, you really need to go through all the code base. That's very important. It makes you rethink contracts. So for instance, the tool will tell you that's returning null, so you need to do something about it. And then looking at the code, you're like, but it's not supposed really to return null. So you can change the contracts a little bit and you'll see some advantages down the road. You'll find a number of bugs. We've found quite a bit of bugs doing this. Actually, even moving Spring Boot 4 to that stuff, we actually fixed a bug that was still in Spring Boot 3, and then we've realized that the bug was there because we didn't use nullability in that area of the code. And finally, Java 24 plus. That's actually 22 plus, but whatever. That's only for building the project. So you don't need to switch your application to Java 24. It's only the JDK that you use to build, and the reason why is because there are bugs in the compiler that they found, because Nullaway is doing crazy stuff. So they found a number of bugs that Java team fixed, but they did not backport them. So you need a new compiler but you use -- release 17, and you run your app on 17, no problem, but you need to have a more recent JDK to build the project. Okay. New feature. Let's have a look to API versioning. So who's doing API versioning on their REST API, Web API? You find that painful? Okay. That can be painful. So that's the feedback that we got from the community. So we decided to do something about it. So let's assume I want to create a new endpoint in my controller, but I don't want that endpoint to show in older versions. So there's a new attribute on your get mapping here called version, where you can specify a version, and that's going to provide some strategy, some additional information on your controller, and you'll see in a minute how you can use this. Then at the controller level, what I want to say is what I do support. And I could say I support 1.0 and above, whatever the and above means. So now I have my controller saying it's 1.0 plus, and that endpoint overrides that decision, and it says, no, I'm only 1.1. Okay, so let's see how you can glue that together. You could glue that with configuration properties, but personally, I find the Java code more easy to read because you have the DSL and the autocompletion, and it's a bit more, let's say, it's a bit more obvious what you're trying to do. Okay, so I have this new method in the Spring Framework 7 where I have a configurer. So what I can do with that configuration. So I can, first of all, I can say how I am going to extract the version. So there are 4 ways, I think, out of the box that you can do, and you can combine it. One is you can provide an HTTP header. You provide a name, and it will, if you specify that in the request, it will extract the version. You can provide a request attribute. So again, question mark API version equals 1.1. You can provide a segment. So if you have something like API 1.0 stats, essentially that's where in the segment you're providing the version. Then you use the path segment, so you're saying this, because in Java everything starts at 0, right? So you're saying in the second segment of the path, you'll find the version. So what was the fault then? I always forget. Is there a fault?
It's
oh yeah,
custom.
You can provide that in the media type. Okay. I'm going to say request header, and I'm going to say it's called API version. Right? Then after that, what you could do, you could say, I want to provide a default version. That's optional. You don't have to do it. So essentially what that means is if you have like clients sending requests to your application and they don't provide a version, that's the version I'm going to use. Okay, so I'm saying, okay, by default, you're on the latest. And then something also that's optional, you can list the version that your application supports. Why is it interesting? If you have a client that sends issue a request with an API version that you no longer support, then they will get a dedicated exception saying this is no longer supported, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Restart the app to see what happens. And going back here, I have some requests here. Use. Okay, so this is the new endpoint that I've added, right? So I'm actually running this. I'm going back to reply. The size is 0 because it's in memory and I restarted the service, so there's no player in the queue. This is in IntelliJ. This is a way to pass a HTTP header. So I'm going to do this, and then in that case, this is what you get. You get a 404 saying, "Don't know about this. Doesn't exist," right? Because you ask, give me this with the API version 1.0. Plenty of other options. Look at the doc how you can configure all of this, but this is actually pretty good. All right. So let's work a little bit more with our application. I have this trick here. As you can see, this is my backend services that I said I have no control over. I do. And I'm going to send a request to ask it to fail 20% of the time. Okay. So let's go back here. Okay, it starts to fail. I don't know what's going on. So I'm queuing. So remember, I'm queuing a player. I'm asking for the profile, asking for the stats, and then something started to break. So where is it? How can I find it? My application is in production. I need to find out. Of course, right now it's too late because I didn't take any measure to configure things, but I'm going to fix this now. So Spring Boot has an observability. Who knows the term observability? Most of you. Perfect. So observability, that's metrics, traces, and logs. Yeah. That essentially gives you a picture of what your ecosystem is doing. Traces are especially interesting if you have like multiple services being responsible in a given request, because you'll see the links between. You'll see the chain of course, essentially, once all the services use the same infrastructure. Macrometer can do that we use in Spring Boot for a long time. It can do plenty of things like sense metric traces to various types of backends. So that's doing all great. And there's also the OpenTelemetry initiative that started to gain some tractions. So in Spring Boot 4, we have added a dedicated starter that makes the getting started experience easier. So let me show you that. But before I do, I need to configure two things. I'll show you this. So I need to configure two things. I need to tell, actually, I'm only going to send traces for the purpose of the demo. You could send metrics and everything, but I'm only focusing on traces. So you could see it's running on my machine. Again, you'll have everything in the repo. So I have this running on currently on my machine. You could see the port here. That's the hotel collector. It's nice actually. Grafana it's like a front end where you could see all your data, and it actually this image provides also endpoints for you to send information. The other thing is I want to make sure that 100% of all the traces are sampled, because by default it's 10%. So if you're doing like a few clicks on your local machine and you don't see traces, that's why the backend is not going to send 100% of the request to your telemetry platform. Otherwise, it's your build will be crazy. So you don't want to do that. And you can see that those actually properties are yellow. That's because the IDE doesn't know about them. And so you remember when we started with Kafka, Elasticsearch, ActiveMQ, you don't see those anymore. Same thing for the config properties. The metadata is linked to the module of the technology. So you have not opt-in for the technology. Property doesn't exist. So there are many ways for you to understand that you need to opt in for something. All right, so no surprise here, I guess, if I tell you that the starter is OpenTelemetry. If I go back to my file, there we go, it's fine. Okay. Okie dokie. Restarting the app and then queuing. Fail. So let's have a look to the dashboard to see what's going on. This is really out of the box, right? I didn't do anything, just started Docker Compose, and this is what I have. So I have a number of traces here. Okay. There we go. Yep. So if I look at the trace now, I can see that I'm doing an HTTP post here. So that's the request that sends to my application. Then it's doing two things. It's doing a get to get the player profile. So that's the yellow bar here. The blue bar is actually the backend service. So that's where you got the reconciliation. So that's the trace from the backend service. Then I'm asking for the stats. I'm issuing the query to get the stats, and that's failing. So failing, failing, failing. Okay. So that, of course, if you click, you'll get like stats about what was the query, what were the headers, and what went wrong, and all kinds of issues. So I know now that the problem is the stats endpoint. Let's have a look at this one. This is this guy. This guy is failing. So of course I could phone whoever did that service and tell them, it's failing, do something. Let's say if a third party you have no control over, you know that eventually it will come back. It's failing sometimes, but it's not failing like forever. So I want to have some resilience in this method calls. I want to, if something happens, I want to try again. Okay. That's also a new feature in Spring Framework 7. That's a span from a project called Spring Retry. Who knows about Spring Retry? Interesting. So Spring Retry now has been sunset, and we've moved the features in Spring Framework. It's a new API, so a revisited API. We've tried also to harmonize a few things, so you'll find the API more modern. Let's put it like that. So what I want to do is I want to essentially configure the fact that if something breaks, please retry. And there is a number of options. One is you provide predicates of what exceptions will trigger a retry. You need to configure this, right? Because if you have a nullPointer exception, well, you haven't if you use JSpecify. If you have like illegal state or illegal argument, that's like a development problem. You don't want to retry, it makes no sense. So in this case, that's if the HTTP layer breaks. So there's a root exception for your HTTP client. If you put that, that would be enough. You could see some default here. So we tried 3 times. The initial delay is 1 second, but we're going to configure things a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to say, please wait 300 milliseconds. And if I keep it like that, it will wait 300 milliseconds. then try again. If it fails, it will wait again 300 milliseconds, 3 times, and then it will throw the original exception. But I can do more things, so I could essentially tell it to do exponential backup. So every retry expand from 50%. And I can also, if I want to, I can add some jitter. So essentially what that does, it adds a bit of randomness. So it's not always the same time you wait. And to enable that, because it's scanning your bean, you need to add an enable. It's the same that enable async, enable schedules, and all that stuff. Cool. Let's try the queue. So it actually might fail if the service fails 3 times in a row. That's where you see an exception. So far, so good. And then, of course, you adapt the max retry, or perhaps you wait longer. In this case, it's failing 20% of the time, regardless of what's happening in a real condition. That's what's not going to happen. You have like a short period of time where the service is like on its knee, then it will come back. It will not fail 20% of the time in a regular manner. Okay, cool. Let me refresh. It's all green now. Look at the trace. So look to one trace. So there you see what happened. It retried twice. So you have the query profile went well. Then it tried it one time and it failed. So you see the emptiness there is the retry period. And then you try again. So you see the period is not really the same. Then that succeeded, and then the request succeeded. So it's no longer here marked as failed. So it's a success. And then you see also in the bar right here, you could see the time where something is going on, right? So you have information about that. Okay. See this. Spring Boot 4 is based on Spring Framework 7.
Before moving on the observability, if the backend service connects to a database, will it also show as a component out of the box?
Not out of the box, no, because the data source is a complex topic. So if you have a JDBC data source, you mean?
Yeah.
You need a proxy for the data source, and that's something that's a bit touchy. So you need to configure that.
In the local setup, if you just have this, like in with the commercial observability tools, that's doable right now. It's easy.
Yeah, if you
with the local setup.
Yes.
I guess you can still do it if it's.
You can definitely do it, but we won't auto-configure that for you because there are side effects you need to be aware of. Spring Boot will not auto-configure something if you need to be aware of what the side effects might be. That doesn't mean you can't do it. It means you have to opt in for it. There is a project called Data Source Proxy, if you're interested.
Yeah.
Search for Data Source Proxy and has all kinds of doc about it.
Mm-hmm.
So Spring Boot 4 is based on Spring Framework 7. So as you're probably aware, new generation for Spring Boot, new major generation for Spring Boot means new major generation for the rest of the portfolio. We have a restring with everything. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. If you're interested, look at the release notes for Spring Framework 7, but essentially we continue with the template to client migration. So we have like REST template, RestClient, JDBC template, JDBC client. So I would highly recommend that if you use the JDBC template to look at JDBC client. Not new, it's already there in Spring Framework 6. Very cool. JMS template as a JMS client now, etc., etc. Lots of work in HTTP config, where we've harmonized and made the API more clear. Class file API, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. It's a feature that they've added in the JDK that we use instead of ASM. So that makes our arrangement more in line with what the JDK does. This major also has, we've decided to have one blog post per week during the milestone phase. So we used to publish one blog post every Tuesday. If you search for Road to GA Spring, you'll find the original blog post that links all of them. A few that I want to show you that are interesting. This one from Brian is talking about where we are in terms of HTTP clients. That gives you more insights why we deprecated the REST template, so you find more info about that. There's a new Jackson major also in town, which might impact you. Spring Boot 4 uses Jackson 3 by default. We do have tools to let you still use Jackson 2 in a deprecated fashion, so there is some info in that blog post. This is the blog post that's totally outdated now that I see it, because the last two have been published. So pretend there's a blue thingy. The first one, if you're interested by retriable, was at the last demo I did. So there's plenty of detail there. The second one is for API versioning, obviously. So what I've been covering, part of what I've been covering today is in much more detail in those. The cost telemetry one is especially interesting if you want to see what we've been doing the past month on that. And as I promised, this is 1 hour on the dot. Thank you very much. This is the repo. Brian Clausel, by the way, is my colleague. We used to do those talks together. And he did the slides also. I didn't do the slides. If I was responsible for the slides, he would be ashamed. So I'm glad he did it. And this is my contact info. Feel free to reach out, provide feedback about your use of Spring, your migration experience. And it's still 17, so I'm done. Thank you. Questions? Yes.
I remember that when migrating from Spring Boot 2 to 3, there was a companion plugin or something highlighting some tips, links to perform the migration. Is there something similar for 3 to 4?
You're talking about the properties or?
Yeah, maybe.
Properties migrator. Yeah, it's still there. So properties migrator, it's all detailed in the. So first of all, on the wiki, so if you go to github.com/spring projects/Spring Boot, essentially the Spring Boot GitHub project. If you click on wiki, then you'll find the release notes for Spring Boot 4, and you'll also find a migration guide, and that gives you in much more detail what's changed, what you need to be aware of, etc. And in that document, you'll find a reference to the properties migrator. Essentially, what it does is you drop that as a dependency to your app, you start the app, then it will inspect the environment and find the properties that you use that are either deprecated or have been removed. So it will warn you, and it will do so even for system properties or environment variables. So if you start an app and you have like somewhere in the bash script, you've put some property because you want to override whatever, it will tell you that, oh, that property no longer exists, so you need to adapt that file. Once you're done with the migration, please drop the property migrator. It's not meant to run with your app. It's only a temporary measure.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yes.
Speaking of Spring Boot 2, is there any chance to go from 2 to 4?
No.
It doesn't make sense.
So that's actually a very good question. The way we recommend the community to upgrade is to upgrade feature release by feature release. So in your case, let's assume you're on 2.7 something.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm guessing. First of all, the very first thing you need to do is upgrade to the latest 2.7, so 2.7.18, making sure you get all the fixes, etc. Then your first stop is to upgrade to 3.0, but not 3.0.0, very important. The last bug fix of the 3.0, because when 3.0 landed back then a long time ago, there are plenty of community members that told us about issues. So if you upgrade to 3.0.0, you're back in time and you're removing all that feedback, right? So it's very important to upgrade to the directly to 3.0. I don't know, 12 or 13, whatever. Look at the migration guide from 2.7 to 3.0. Then once you have done that, you repeat. So 3.1.14, 3.2.12, 3.4. whatever, up to 3.5 and then 4.1.
Got it.
That's how you're supposed to migrate. And each feature release has release notes. Each major has a migration guide because the investment on your side is more important for major and less important for feature release. The reason why you also need to do this way is that every time you upgrade Spring Boot, you upgrade third-party dependencies. And so if you go to, let's say, an example out of random, you upgrade from Hibernate version from 2.7 to the Hibernate version to 4.0, you'll be in a lot of pain. So you don't want to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Take one change at a time.
Speaking about migrations, there is also the Open Rewrite tool. And I know that there has been some little drama on their side about contribution, about who should be responsible of the recipe for the migration. I don't know if that's settled on their side or on yours, because I've seen that there are already community recipe trying to migrate to Spring Boot 4.
So about Open Rewrite and the availability of recipes, modern, they do their things, right? So I'm actually not aware of the detail, but what I can say is that we do have a product called App Advisor for customers that lets you upgrade from one version of Spring Boot to the next. And those recipes are built with the Spring team, so those are recipes that are built internally with the help of the team. I guess that's why Modern decided to do what they've done. So I guess it's not set up then. That's all I can say. I'm not aware of the detail. Now, if the community wants to work on recipes based on Spring, the tool is there and it's great. So yeah. Okay. I'm not aware of any initiative in the open source web at least.
Thanks.
So thank you for your efforts on the migration, and I hope to start in the next quarter to go to Spring Boot 4. But I'm wondering, and maybe it's a bit early, but I don't know what your ambitions are now for next minor releases and anything else. It's a very early question because I know you released very early, but I guess you're talking about those things. What is the future perspective?
Yeah. So what are we going to do next? So usually what we do, we discuss that in January, because maybe you're not aware in, how that works, but I'm going back to your question in a second. The release schedule for Spring Boot is fixed. We have a release train which is very formalized. Usually when I talk about this, people are very surprised, but you could guess, well, actually not guess, but you could know when Spring Boot 4.1 will be released and when Spring Boot 4.2 will be released today. You can do that now. Same thing as a JDK. So the way this works is we do one minor in May and one minor in November. In between, we do bug fix release every month, and the release train also has a fixed cadence, so the train starts the second Monday of the month. And Spring Boot is at the back of the train, so the Thursday of the week after. Okay, so if you choose the second Monday of May, you add 1 week and Thursday, that's where 4.1 is going to be released. So back to your question. We are now processing the feedback from the 4.0 GA, which has been relatively light at the moment with the obvious candidates we knew would be pain points, so we already got that feedback and try to address it the best we can. But we're still very busy into landing and taking a bit of sleep also. So we usually, because of that release cadence, I'm back to why I mentioned this. We meet in January usually to discuss those topics. So I don't have anything like concrete to tell you about 4.1, except the things that we wanted to do for 4.0 we didn't manage to do because of the lack of time, because the release is fixed, right? That's going to move to 4.1, but I don't have anything juicy or specific to tell you about that right now. So.
Okay. Thank you.
About custom starters, now that the starters have been more modularized and are then smaller, did the recommendations for creating our own starter also evolve? Because previously it was advised to have an auto-configure module and then a starter, which were two separate things. As far as I've seen, it seems that now the newer starter encapsulate the auto-configurations directly.
Do you have a mic, or do I need to repeat the question?
I don't have mic.
Yeah, not
No.
You're the host, so. So the question was for those watching. Custom starter, our recommendation was about having the configuration module, having a starter as separate modules, and now is the starter having the auto configuration has the recommendation change. Is that?
Yep.
Yeah. So we used to suggest in the past an auto configuration and a starter module as being separate in cases where the auto configuration was dealing with more than one technology. So you have in your organization, let's say you had support for tech XYZ. Then you had an auto configuration for XYZ, a starter for X, a starter for Y, and a starter for Z. And that was a recommendation. However, if you had like a smaller surface area that's only Y, for instance, then you could put that into a single module. That recommendation probably changes a bit because now you're not in a situation where your auto configuration module can depend on an on Spring Boot auto configure that brings you everything. You have to, let's say that X depends on, I don't know, Spring Boot JSON, for instance, you have to pick that. So it's now moving to a module per tech rather than an auto-configure per tech. And then you can decide to add a starter or not. It depends on what you want to do. So the boundary between the module and the starter for us is that the module brings the minimal dependency set to use the technology, and the starter has an additional opinion that it could bring additional dependency to trigger more things. If you don't have that, then you could only have a module with everything.
Okay.
So it's kind of the same as before. The only difference is that we do actually now realize that the doc is outdated. Thank you for that. We shouldn't recommend you to have one Spring Boot auto configure with everything in it, because that's not what we do anymore.
Okay.
I have 11 minutes of questions. Let's do 4 more.
So use intensively non-book, non-null, which is runtime. Now, yeah, with JSpecify, which is a build time, should we migrate, or yeah, how do you see that from your perspective?
Wait, so you're talking about Lombok. So the fact that with Lombok you can't add those annotations, that's what you mean?
Well, no, we have them, which is, yeah, Lombok adds if null, throw null pointer exception in our code base. Imagine we want to move to JSpecify, the contract changes a bit because it will move to build time, not at runtime anymore. With this JSpecify.
Well, it won't. It will never throw the exception. That's more what JSpecify does. So it's not really changing the contract. It's really changing the code. You will not be in a situation where the exception is thrown, because if you are in a situation where the exception can be thrown, your build will fail.
Yeah.
So it's quite different, right? You're not moving things, you're removing things. And there's some recording, so I'm not going to say anything about it. So please don't use it. Another question?
Yeah. Stéphane.
Hi.
So I saw you were using also IO Spring Java format dependency. This is new to me. If you could explain.
Yes. So we have show you this. So about the Spring Java format, and I guess that you did some search, which is fair enough. So this guy. So within the Spring team, as it started on, with Spring Boot. So what we wanted to make sure of is that when we push something to the repo, the code that's changed is the only thing that we can see. So we don't have problem with new line being added or formatting style being added. So the code is really focused on what has changed. And it's really difficult to do that if you don't have the right tools. So that's where Java format comes in. So Java format is several things. I don't know why I can't scroll like that. But you see the leaf here. Actually, you don't, but trust me, there is a leaf. That's the plugin for IntelliJ. So Java format is a plugin for IntelliJ. When you trigger the reformat action, it will apply the same rules. There is a client, a build plugin. So let me maybe do something funky like this. And yep. So it's going to tell me actually I had something that wasn't formatted correctly. So the build will fail telling me those files are not formatted correctly. So essentially, since you build, because you have to build before you push, right? That's what you're supposed to do. Your build will fail and then you'll have to reformat the code. There is a plugin for Eclipse and there is a plugin for all, I think there's a plugin for NetBeans, I can't really remember. But something that needs to be said as well is that this is really a plugin for the Spring team. You're welcome to use it, but if the format doesn't suit you, we're not going to add a configuration option, right? The way this works is there is one format. You can't have like a config file saying, oh, I want tab. Actually, tabs in space you can, but if I want like 2 space and then that curly brace needs to be in that way, we don't do that. So there is one set of rules. If you like them, add the plugin in your organization, reformat the code, and then you can enjoy the same as we do, but the format is fixed. It's been very helpful for us.
So it's not Spring dependent. I could use it on Spring 3, for instance.
You can do that on anything that uses the JVM. It has nothing to do with Spring.
Oh,
It's not related to Spring at all. It's like it's a build plugin. You can do that with Maven. You can do that with Gradle. Actually, since I haven't been showing Maven a lot, let me at least open one file.
Where is the pub?
So if you want to use it, so this is the equivalent for Maven. Essentially, what it does, it runs the validate go. So that's in Maven. So Maven plugin, Gradle plugin, and plugins for IDs. And so if the format is not right, it will fail the build. Same way as Gradle did. But unrelated to Spring, nothing to do with Spring, except that there's Spring in the build, because we actually maintain it.
thanks a lot.
I have my 15 minutes, so I'm happy. If you have more questions, feel free to reach out. Let me maybe give that again. As you didn't have the opportunity, I'm welcoming all feedback. Thanks very much for joining us. Have a nice evening.